Hello, my name is Mary Struford, and I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Duluth, as well as a trained and certified LWV moderator, and I have the pleasure of moderating this forum. On behalf of the League of Women Voters Duluth, I would like to welcome everyone. The League of Women Voters is pleased to present these general issue forum for St. Louis County Sheriff. Thank you, candidates, for your willingness to participate in county government and this forum. The forum will be presented on PACT-TV and linked to the LWV Duluth website. Feel free to share the forum with others. LWV Duluth posts complete, unedited recordings of forums. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting. Excerpts or edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan or political purposes. The League of Women Voters believes that an informed citizenry is the foundation of effective democracy. The League is open to membership for men and women who are interested in nonpartisan civic participation. The League of Women Voters Duluth realizes that creative and innovative policies and practices are forged out of diverse points of view. We believe diverse perspectives are necessary for responsible and representative decision-making. We acknowledge our commitment to welcome and facilitate diversity, equity, and inclusion in all aspects of our work. We strive to include people from a mix of abilities and backgrounds in all of our activities, and you are invited to join us. For more information, check out our website at lwvduluth.org. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan volunteer organization that works at the local, state, and national level to encourage citizens to participate in government. While we as a league do study and take stands on issues, we do not endorse or support political parties or candidates. The views expressed at this forum are those of the participating candidates and not those of the League of Women Voters Duluth. Additionally, LWV sponsorship of this forum is not a league endorsement of any of the individual candidates participating. Please remember to exercise your right to vote in the general election on November 8th. At this time, I would like to introduce our candidates, Jason Lukovsky and Gordon Ramsay. Thank you for being here. Our forum will begin with the candidates giving a 2-minute opening statement, followed by the questioning round. Questions have been vetted by LWV Duluth committees. Candidates were not given the questions in advance. Each candidate will be given up to 1.5 minutes in which to provide their response. The questioning round has been set up so that each candidate will be asked questions in a rotating order. The order in which the candidates will respond was determined at random. After the questioning round is completed, each candidate will be allowed a 2-minute closing statement prior to the end of the forum. Candidates will now provide their prepared opening statements, and we'll begin with candidate Lukovsky.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you to the League of Women Voters Duluth for this opportunity for voters to get to know me personally and professionally. My name is Jason Lukovsky. I'm a lifelong resident of St. Louis County, currently living in Friedenberg Township with my wife Tammy of 24 years, our 15-year-old son, and our 13-year-old daughter. Currently, I'm the undersheriff for St. Louis County and have been working with the sheriff's office for 24 years. Throughout my career, I've worked in or supervised in every division within our organization and have achieved every promotable rank. That includes investigator, sergeant, lieutenant, and supervising deputy. St. Louis County is a diverse county. We encompass a little over 7,000 square miles. The duties and responsibilities of our organization are similar to other law enforcement municipalities within our jurisdictions, but there's 3 duties that I really want to stress in terms of the differences. First and foremost, it is our 911 communication center. We are a primary PSAP that serves the city of Duluth, which is the city of the first class. We service over 180 user agencies countywide, and we respond to or process over 200,000 calls per year. The second significant difference between a sheriff's office and a police department would be the oversight of our correctional institutions within our county. That includes the St. Louis County Jail in Duluth and 2 lockup facilities, one in Virginia and one in the city of Hibbing. Lastly are the duties of emergency management. Currently, we do have an emergency management division within our 911 communications wing of the sheriff's office. Those duties and responsibilities are significant in today's day and age.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsay.
I too would like to thank the league for this opportunity today. My name is Gordon Ramsay. I currently live in Duluth with my wife of 25 years. Very similar background to Jason. We both have 15-year-olds, and I have a 12-year-old as well. I have been in policing now for 30 years. I got my start in 1993 while I was attending UMD. Worked part-time in Iron River, Wisconsin. I ended up obtaining my bachelor's degree from UMD and my master's degree from St. Scholastica, as well as I am an FBI National Academy graduate. Throughout my career, I worked the majority of it in Duluth. Worked primarily in the Central Hillside and downtown. I was promoted to sergeant, where I continued to have primary responsibilities downtown in the Central Hillside. Those early days in policing shaped me for who I am as a police officer and police leader. I'm very much relationship focused. I was appointed to Duluth Police Chief in 2006, where I served for 10 years. During that time, we received, through our community policing efforts, national recognition for those, as well as lowered shootings, robberies, burglaries, and auto thefts to numbers not seen in decades. Went on in 2016 to expand my horizons and was chief in Wichita, Kansas, a city of about 400,000, where we had a budget of about $110 million. Had tremendous experiences there with race relations, lowering crime, and building relationships with the community. Very busy city during some of the most tumultuous time in policing. Last year alone, we had 4 police officers shot in the line of duty, and we had an in line of duty death. Those experiences have created the leader that I am today, as well as, you know, they had a lot of issues with, we had court security as well as holding cells. So there is some similarities, and dispatch to what the county deals with as well. Thanks.
Thank you. At this time, we will move to the questions that have been submitted by organizations and the League of Women Voters. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond, and we will begin with candidate Ramsay. The first question: what do you see as the biggest challenge facing the Sheriff's Department, and how would you address it?
Well, I've traveled over 30,000 miles in the county from one end to the other, listening to residents and businesses. And it's clear to me one of the biggest issues that we face in the county is the crime and drug issues that have gone up, particularly in the last few years. It's happening for many reasons, but one of the top reasons for death in the county, other than natural death right now, is overdoses, drug overdoses. As a matter of fact, I lost a neighbor just down the street from me last week to a drug overdose, and she left, a high schooler. There's very few families that are not touched right now by the drug issues that we're facing. It is an epidemic. When I go to the north part of the county, I hear from the Iron Range chiefs that they want to have a closer relationship with the sheriff's administration and work on these issues together. Those feelings have led to them to endorse me for sheriff, right? They want to attack these issues and work on them together. One of the things that I would do as sheriff is create regular bi-weekly meetings with the Iron Range Police Departments, where we go over crime trends, what's happening, and we target drug offenders and criminals so that our schools remain safe and our communities remain safe.
Thank you. Candidate Lukovsky.
I share the same views as candidate Ramsay in terms of the epidemic and overdoses surrounding substance use disorders, specifically fentanyl, heroin. And currently right now, we are combating that crime. I will make a bold statement and say that the Lake Superior Violent Offender Task Force is the most productive as it has ever been. This is a result of cooperation by numerous entities, commitment and cooperation by numerous entities within the county, including entities on the Iron Range. We have strong leadership. We have commitment by administrations. They are doing tremendous work on a daily basis. But that's only one part of the process. The other part is the aftercare. So as a result of the work by the Lake Superior Violent Offender Task Force, there is a substance use response team that is attached to them. So not only are we getting the violent criminals with guns distributing drugs off the street, we're also providing aftercare service in the form of this CERT team and our peer recovery specialists that are a part of that group as well.
Thank you. Our next question, which types of crime have seen a significant increase at the county level, including assaults, cyber crimes, property crimes, drug-related crimes, and others? And we'll start with candidate Lukovsky.
According to the crime trend analysis that we're monitoring over the last 2 to 3 years, we have seen an increase in our drug crimes. Mm-hmm. We have seen an increase in our simple property crimes. Mm-hmm. If we look at our NIBRS codes, there has been an increase. Assaults are another one. Fortunately, we don't live in an area with a population like Wichita, so our homicide rates are not nearly that. However, there is a small increase, and we need to keep monitoring those crime trend rates. We need to keep pulling statistical information from our computer-aided dispatch to understand where those crime trends are happening. From a sheriff's office perspective, and the 7,000 square miles that the sheriff is responsible for, there needs to be a focus in cooperation and collaboration with our police chiefs in these jurisdictions. However, there are rural residents that don't live in municipalities that are equally concerned about their crime rates and expect me as sheriff to enforce our laws for them. So it's that happy medium, right? That cooperation, that collaboration is definitely needed. We do have multiple venues for that cooperation, that communication. Can we do better? Absolutely, and I look forward to that opportunity.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsay.
There's no doubt that COVID has really negatively impacted the criminal justice system and accountability. And it has caused crime to go up across the country. It's not unique to St. Louis County. From my perspective, you know, when schools were closed, when after-school activities and sports and all the extracurricular stuff that our children normally have, when that was shut down, that was really detrimental. And I think we're going to look back years down the road and see the impacts. The closest thing that I ever saw was the study out of New Orleans with Hurricane Katrina after their schools were closed for 6 months, and the negative impact that it had on their kids throughout their rest of their time in school. So with the courts being shut down, the jails closed, that lack of accountability piece really is feeding that continuous crime, and there's a number of criminals that feel that there's no accountability. I saw recently, well actually it was a few months back, a retail store has to hire police officers now in the city because shoplifting has become such a problem. So we need to work hard on getting everything back to operating at pre-COVID levels. In Wichita, we did that in 2020. Within months of after the closures started, we recognized that there'd be significant impacts if we did not get the system back and operating. And I work closely with our courts and our judges and other law enforcement to make sure that we could ensure that that accountability piece wasn't lost. Because we know that if we didn't fix that, that there would be increase in crime.
Thank you. Our next question, you kind of addressed this, so I apologize if it's a bit redundant, but I'll give you a chance in case you want to add some more. What types of crime in the county are most in need of attention? Do you have a plan for dealing with these crimes in a more effective way? And we start with candidate Ramsay.
Yeah, that's a common question. And what we know is that it's oftentimes the same people that commit crime over and over again. That recidivism and issues around drug use and mental health really are driving a lot of the crime. And the state and feds have got out of the mental health business and pushed it to the local level, the county, municipalities. So the institutions, the mental health institutions of the past now is the county jail. And in many cases, in most cases, the criminal justice system in the county jail is not the place for individuals that are suffering from chemical dependency or mental health. And the drug issues is what's driving a lot of the crime as well. There are many, many good people in the community, in the system, working to address this. But we're in unprecedented times, and we need to keep looking at what we can do better. For me, I have always enjoyed the relationship with probation and parole to ensure that accountability piece. I think there's a lot of opportunities to work closer together in St. Louis County with probation, parole, with the courts, and look at what other areas are doing and how what is driving their success. But there is no doubt in my mind that there is a need for improvement in this area.
Thank you. Candidate Lukovsky.
As sheriff, I would continue focusing on the drug crimes through the use of our task force. I also look forward to working closely with our new county attorney, who has already shown some initiative to collaborate and include external agencies to try and brainstorm ideas on how we better combat what we're experiencing in not only the city of Duluth, but all cities within our county. A more strong approach for those drug dealers who are coming from different areas of the United States into our communities, and not only distributing narcotics, but doing so while being precluded from possessing weapons. I think there's an opportunity there to send a strong message on crime of that nature and do justice to the victims that you hear us talk about and will hear us talk about for the next 30-some days. The commitment organizationally needs to be there. We need to continue seeking out funding to ensure that appropriate staffing levels for that task force exist. Myself, I've committed 2 additional supervisory positions to that task force, and we're seeing benefits of that cooperative relationship.
Thank you. Next question. What are the main differences between county law enforcement and city police department? And we start with candidate Lukovsky.
I think the biggest, most apparent difference between the policing initiatives is simply the geography. 7,092 square miles. Now granted, that's not all areas incorporated by a population, but still the distance to travel to get where you need to go is a burden. I've seen that for my 24 years working with the sheriff's office. I'm proud to say that in St. Louis County's most recent survey, 911 and patrol services were ranked very high. Our deputy response rate pursuant to KPI indicators, which we report on, have dropped the last 3 years. I think we're 13 minutes on average to any type of call. So if you look at the magnitude or the magnitude of the size of our area, we're doing a good job. We're going to look to continue improving. The similarity is when you do get there, we still have an obligation to interact with our community members. We need to, when we're not responding to police calls for service, we need to engage with them so that they understand, so we better understand what their needs are. It happens on a more broad scope, where in a municipality, if I'm working a beat cop, I can cover 7, 8 businesses in a matter of an hour and interact with those business owners, those citizens. It takes a more conscious effort in a larger area.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsay?
There's no doubt that St. Louis County is really unique in its geography and just vast size. But what a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of sheriffs come from police departments. 3 of the last 5 sheriffs in St. Louis County were from police departments. The last couple sheriffs in Hennepin County and Ramsay County have come from police departments. So, you know, some people talk about the differences, but really, when you look at those numbers, it's not that significant. The other thing is that I believe that it is good to have change with leadership, that outsiders coming into organizations are very beneficial. A different lens to look at problems and address issues, I think, are healthy for organizations. And my experience going to another agency from the outside and working through significant issues is beneficial to have an outsider come in with that fresh perspective. But again, you know, not all police departments, you know, many do have 911 and dispatching. They do have holding facilities, court security, municipal court. And so, you know, from managing close to 1,000 employees at my last job and a budget of $110 million, I don't think the transition would be of any significance.
Thank you. Our next question, how does the sheriff department work with or assist local police departments? And we'll start with candidate Ramsay.
Yeah, from my perspective, the sheriff is there to support, to operate the jail, and to bring people together and agencies together to address issues. I alluded a little bit to one of the things that I want to do, especially on the Iron Range, is create these bi-weekly meetings where we talk about investigations and trends so we can attack those issues together. I think the sheriff, when we look at current law enforcement applicants and really the negative feeling toward law enforcement the last few years by, you know, in some cases elected officials, I think the sheriff, well, the way I see that and the position I would like to use it for, is to stand up for our good law enforcement officers in public safety and encourage the best and the brightest people to enter this profession and share the great things that our law enforcement does every minute of every day, because that information is not getting out there currently. Sheriff's Department doesn't use social media. They don't, you know, highlight the great things that their staff do every minute of every day, which is what's done. And unfortunately, when one bad thing happens, that dominates the news. And if we are to turn this around, where we're not seeing the applicants' numbers like we have in the past, matter of fact, barely filling vacancies, there is a need for leadership to stand up and talk about the importance of people joining this noble profession.
Thank you. Candidate Lukovsky?
I think first and foremost, you know, developing those relationships with the municipalities within our county starts with that open communication. I too have been endorsed by law enforcement unions. Over the course of my 24-year career, I've proven my ability to work together with other agencies. Most recently, a couple agencies decided to leave a consortium of agencies and go to a new RMS system. In my capacity as supervising deputy within the 911 center, I had enough understanding technologically what that was going to entail, and I also had a front row seat to the deficiencies that were going to be caused by this decision. I made a conscious effort to ensure that I was availing myself to the necessary law enforcement partners to ensure that their new implementation was seamless. That included actually paying for an interface to ensure that their RMS system could talk with my CAD system at the time. There have been numbers pulled. There is information in terms of how much it's going to cost in order for us to all get back on the same page again. As I had mentioned in a different forum, those decisions are beyond me, but they were made. And I, for the last 7 years, have tried keeping everything together.
Thank you. Our next question, describe some of the programming offered to individuals housed at the county jail. In what ways do these programs contribute to public safety, and what, if any, changes would you make to the available programming? And we start with candidate Lukovsky.
So there is a tremendous amount of work being done by multiple entities up at the St. Louis County Jail. First and foremost, we've seen huge success with our medication-assisted treatment program. It is monitored by medical professionals, but there is an awareness that we need to destigmatize these substance use disorders, and there's a recognition that we need to involve ourselves in this collaboration to ensure that we're doing best for our jail population that is leaving our facility. Too often we see that revolving door, and if we can continue to cooperate with our mental health practitioners, Range Mental Health, HDC, RAD, all of these professionals bring collaboration to the table and help us better understand what the needs of our population is. Additionally, the Clarity Project is a St. Louis County-led initiative. There are numerous talented and energizing people involved. One of the things I look forward to is a new jail medical contract, which has been entered with a local health provider. I feel that our service to our inmate population when they leave our doors is better served by a local provider who's invested in our area.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsay.
Re-entry, that is, inmates that are released back to the community, is a really critical element of success. And from my perspective, I want to make sure that those that are being released, that they are given the tools and resources to do well and succeed. Recidivism rate, that is those that reoffend and come back to the jail, really needs to be strongly evaluated and examined to see what we can do to improve upon. As well as, oftentimes people are in jail that don't always need to be there. GPS monitoring has come so far in the last couple of decades that I would like to see GPS monitoring used for more of those individuals who are stable and have employment, but may have made a mistake. And rather than being incarcerated, are there more options for the use of GPS systems? Many cities and correctional facilities use that. I would also like to see an use of community service versus incarceration. That is potentially putting those that have offended to work to earn back that community trust through cleaning up graffiti or cleaning up garbage, and kind of that reinvestment and payback to the community. Lastly, I do think there's great opportunities with ARC, Arrowhead Regional Corrections, such as NERC and their new meatpacking plant, which I think is or meatpacking opportunities, which is really a great direction, and I think we need to look at more.
Thank you. Candidate Lukovsky.
I think I started that one.
You did.
Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry about that. Okay. The next question, and this is I'll just give you an opportunity to expand on what you've said. The question is, do you see a role for the Sheriff's Department in reentry programs? And would there be some other things that, I know you've mentioned some, but I'll give you an opportunity to expand some more on that.
Yeah, again, it goes back to, does the individual need to be incarcerated? Now, oftentimes I see us make the mark and sometimes not make the mark, where someone is employed and has a family to support and they lose their job because they are incarcerated. And they're not necessarily an ongoing threat, or they're not an ongoing threat at all for committing further crime. And I think those are the ones that we need to look closer at. The mental health in the jails right now, 35 to 40% of the individuals incarcerated suffer from mental health. We know in many cases if we can get them stabilized that they wouldn't have committed the crime in the first place or done what they did to get there. So that kind of street outreach early, we just need more resources for the mental health issues that have really disappeared. So creating a pod in the jail that is strictly for those that are in mental health crisis, where more attention can be given, more resources to get them stabilized, as well as the connection to social services and other resources in the community to ensure that they're getting what they need so that they can be stabilized and not go back into that cycle. Again, just a little bit on some of our partnerships with, like, say, NERC, Northeast Regional Corrections, and I think there's other opportunities there. They currently have a number of open beds. Skills can be learned there, and such as the meatpacking, that I think we need to continue to spend more time on.
Thank you. Candidate Lukovsky.
Mary, could you read that again, please?
Yes. And I'm going to just edit it a little bit here because you've already talked about the county jail program, but the role of the sheriff's department in that program at the county jail of reentry, and what would you like to see happen?
I think we continue communicating and working with our partnerships like we're doing right now. There have been a lot of there's been a lot of whiteboarding going on in our Clarity Group meetings. One of the things that we had talked about and entertained was, pursuing funding, grant opportunities to get a probation officer up in the jail to better or more timely complete the Rule 25s, so that we can speed up the process, for lack of a better term. Those little initiatives here and there, we're seeing results. If normally a person is waiting on a Rule 25 for 30 days, that's 30 days where they're not getting services that they maybe could. We have, in fact, experienced the loss of many facilities along the way that used to provide the mental health services. And again, we're seeing a certain inmate population at the jail that doesn't necessarily belong to be there. So any way we can speed up that process to get people out and to have them connected with services on the outside, the better.
Thank you. Some police departments have employed social workers who work with officers. Would this collaboration be something the sheriff's department would implement, and why or why not? And maybe you have already done that. Candidate Lukovsky?
We have, in fact, done that. We've improved tremendously on the very first model, which was implemented years ago. Most significantly, with the enactment of 988, the suicide prevention hotline, my staff was asked to make a real commitment to being involved in this process. We understood the fact that the 911 center was going to be a cog in this wheel, and in order for it to work, we needed to be at the table to provide our input. We have been operational for 3 months. We're at the end of October. We're pulling statistics to see how many calls had come into our center, which were triaged and ultimately resulted in a response other than a uniformed deputy or a patrol officer. It's our effort to change our response tactics to normally what you would have just sent a peace officer to. We're recognizing nationwide that there are people who are better trained, better equipped to deal with that mental health crisis. and sometimes a person in uniform elevates the situation. So we have done it. You know, the City of Duluth Police Department does in fact have a St. Louis County social worker embedded, and we're monitoring their results, and hopefully we can expand that program.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsay?
Throughout my almost 30 years, I've seen the over-reliance on law enforcement to deal with mental health issues. Early on, I mean, from when I started, the amount of mental health calls that we responded on were minimal. Now, when I go out on the streets, easily 40+% are mental health related. That is significant, and it shows the disinvestment by the state and the feds and how they've pushed that down to local government. But the reality is that law enforcement is not the best service provider for societal ills. And the program that Jason talked about, the embedded social worker, came about after an officer-involved shooting in Duluth, where an individual had been brought in 4 or 5 times in the previous 5 days for being suicidal. And on that last time the officer responded, it ended up being an officer-involved shooting. Fortunately, the individual lived, but that individual as well as the officer are forever changed. And when we audited that, we found that none of the paperwork made it from the ER to social services in that time. So that the idea of putting an embedded social worker in was designed to really look at those suddenly acute cases and stabilize those individuals so that we didn't put our officers in those positions. The system is not working like it should because there's improper funding. So things such as the integrated care team, where you have police, a social worker, and an EMS person to stabilize people, work, and that's the future, and that's really what we need to focus on. But we do need to decouple police from mental health as much as we can.
Thank you. Our next question: what do you believe is the role of the Sheriff's Department in addressing school-to-prison pipeline? Candidate Ramsay?
Sure. I was an SRO for a number of years, and you know, the concerns about criminalizing issues in school was always a concern of mine and continued as a leader in policing. So one of the things that I did as chief was I would partner with groups such as the NAACP, where we would review and audit tickets to kids of color every year. We would redact the identifying information, but we would review those tickets to ensure that they were meeting community standards and that they were consistent with avoiding disparities and looking at the context behind the ticket. And that was very beneficial for me as a leader, but it was also very beneficial for advocacy groups to see the context of those charges and how sometimes an assault, police don't have the discretion when a family wants to pursue charges. As well as the other thing that I worked on with our partners was developing restorative justice in the schools, so that when that enforcement and the criminal justice system was not always the first choice, that there was practices that we reviewed, and we worked hard to keep kids out of the system and focused on the coaching, guiding, and mentoring versus being the heavy hand in law enforcement. And it really comes down to the philosophy that is instilled in the SROs in partnership with the schools to ensure that we're not using law enforcement for policy issues in the schools.
Thank you. Candidate Lukovsky?
So we have a very good working relationship with our rural school districts within St. Louis County. Currently we have 3 SRO officers who spend time in 4 different venues. I can tell you strongly that if we had additional funding, they would double that. And yes, it does take an organizational philosophy as well as communication with the school boards, the superintendents, to understand what their expectations of our SROs in those schools are. It is not disciplinary. It should not be disciplinary. We're there to build relationships. We're there to allow those students to feel a certain level of comfort. That way, They have yet one more person they can go to when things aren't going well in their mind. The school is the disciplinarian. The sheriff's office assists them, in their process, but ultimately, it's the school complying with state standards. I feel confident that when we review our stats, we are not seeing the trends that potentially are within other districts in municipalities in our county, but we're consciously aware of them and would be open to any type of scrutiny, audit, to ensure that we're doing the best we can for our students.
Thank you. And before we move on, candidate Lukovsky, would you please tell us what SRO means in case some of our audience is not familiar?
Sure. It's an acronym for School Resource Officer.
Thank you. Moving on to our next question, and we start with candidate Lukovsky. How big of a problem are ghost guns in the area, and what's being done to address that, if that is the case?
I don't know that I can categorize the numbers that we're seeing. We're obviously aware of them through intelligence bulletins from not only our state investigating agency, but nationwide. I feel that we're going to see more of a prevalence in the future with the 3D printing that's out there. Obviously, it's a concern for our schools, for anyone in general. There's no real way to track. A lot of these ghost guns have no serial numbers. So I'm sure within the United States of America, they're more prevalent, but yet I think locally our detectives, our investigators, our evidence technicians are aware and keenly waiting to see how this is going to continue. I'm not aware of any of our investigators coming across one, so that's a good sign.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsay?
Ghost guns are a significant problem in parts of the country, particularly where there is really strict gun regulation. Have not seen that ghost guns in the Midwest like many other cities on the coast are seeing, but no doubt it is a problem for the future, and it's something that needs to be addressed, and solutions need to be made to figure all this out. It is changing so rapidly around how you can print up guns, through printers, and it's one of those things where we need to act quickly and nimbly to figure out solutions. As you know, shootings in the county have gone up a fair amount in recent times. While the ghost guns have not been an issue, shootings are a concern to many of the community members that I speak to.
Thank you. Gun violence seems to be a growing problem, as you just mentioned. Statistics show that suicide by gun is a big problem among young and old males. How would you address that issue of gun violence, and especially in relationship to suicide?
This is another trend that I've seen throughout my career really increase in the last couple of decades. The amount of suicides we're seeing in the county really is significant. I believe it's second right now to overdoses. And we need to talk about it. I know they are in the schools, which I think is a good step, talking about suicide prevention and how to talk about these issues. But I think it goes back to the mental health crisis, and particularly after COVID, I think it's become a bigger problem. And we need community discussions on this issue. More and more families are being impacted by it. And the fact alone, the statistics of the amount of suicides, a lot of people don't realize how many there are and how many people are impacted by it. So I think education and prevention are very important in this arena as we continue to see those numbers rise and more families impacted by it.
Thank you. Candidate Lukovsky?
Well, I think a major step in this is the school resource officer program, and the more staff that we can get into those situations, hopefully, again, it's that relationship building. once you get to know somebody on a personal level, you tend to have an idea when maybe they're not doing well. We know that with our loved ones, but I would equate that to a relationship between a school resource officer and their students that they see daily. The mental health piece or aspect is huge. We need to commit, we need to go all in for resources that address the mental health. We're seeing mental health cross over into the substance use disorders. We're seeing the mental health cross over into the increasing suicide rates. The focus, again, there needs to be a priority by our policymakers, our to appropriate funding. And we don't have, as law enforcement officers, we don't have the same facilities that we had to bring people to for help. The hospitals are bursting at the seam, the jail is bursting at the seam, and we wonder why we're in a situation we are. There needs to be a commitment. The sheriff's office will partner wherever we can with the mental health providers to ensure that we're doing our part to end the high suicide rates.
Thank you. Starting with candidate Lukovsky, do you support red flag laws or extreme risk protection orders? These are laws that have been passed in other states dealing with the mental health issues.
So, as sheriff, my race is nonpartisan, right? Currently, right now, we have certain laws on the books that allow us to conduct background checks on people wishing to purchase or carry. I want to see more. Before I commit to that answer, I want to see more. What are our results? What are our goals? What are we trying to accomplish? I'm not going to say that increased laws wouldn't help reduce crime, but I don't know that. So my philosophy is, as sheriff, being that this county is so diverse and we have differing opinions, let me enforce the laws that I have at my disclosure. Let me enforce the laws that are on the books of the state of Minnesota. Should legislators decide differently in terms of what new laws should come about to address certain societal issues, as sheriff, we will enforce the laws that are on the books.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsay?
Yeah, this issue, with the increase in suicides and the mental health issues, it's becoming a bigger and bigger issue that's talked about nationally. From my perspective, when I was on the street in the early mid-90s, when someone was suicidal and they had a gun, we would take it. There were some court decisions years later that precluded us in some cases from removing someone's firearms. I can tell you, as being a police chief for 16 years, I've had many families come to me concerned about a loved one who is in crisis, spinning out of control, whether a drug-induced crisis or an organic mental health, and they know they have guns, and they're really concerned about what they're going to do with those guns. That is at the heart of this issue. One of the problems that we have today is that it's so polarized when you talk about guns. And everybody gets in their corners, and we're not able to talk about the issues and hear from law enforcement on what is difficult about these issues and how do we keep people safe. I can tell you that as a 16-year police chief, I've brought people together to work through difficult issues and come up with solutions. And we need to be solution-oriented when a family is saying, hey, my brother is spinning out of control and he's got an arsenal of weapons and we're concerned about this. What are the answers? And I sit here today and say, I don't know all the answers, but we need to work together and figure them out. And everybody can't be in the corners and get into the polarized arena that we're in now if we're gonna make our community safe.
Thank you. Our next question, what procedures would you implement to improve or maintain transparency in the Sheriff's Department? And we start with candidate Ramsay.
Well, just talking about the SROs and disparities, having watched and attended the county board meetings, I've seen and heard from commissioners and community members alike that they would like to see, what are the numbers? And that is critical. One of the first steps in transparency and gaining trust is sharing data, and sharing arrest data, sharing ticketing data, and meeting with advocacy groups is important. That's one step. Involving the community in policy development. You know, throughout my career, when we would make policies for cameras or body cameras, we would ask the community for feedback. That is important transparency. Ensuring that when there is concerns through advisory boards or civilian review boards, and allowing the public to come in and poke, prod, and pull back the layers and ask questions is critical for that transparency part. Body cameras is important. In Duluth, we were one of the first mid-sized agencies in the country to fully implement body cameras, as well as Wichita was one of the first large agencies in the country to fully implement body cameras under my leadership. But really interacting with the community and sharing your data and talking about it on traffic stops and working together to make sure people trust their law enforcement partners is critical.
Thank you. Candidate Lukovsky?
Yes, in order for there to be any appearance of transparency, there does need to be that communication, working with your community partners, availing that information to them, and an allowing opportunity for that commentary only strengthens your organization. You know, earlier we had heard a comment about change. It's good for a fresh perspective. That may be true in some cases when things are not going well. When things are going well, that change comes from our external community partners to ensure that we are meeting their needs, we're meeting the expectations, and we're evolving as an organization. We most recently implemented body-worn cameras this last quarter. Many would say it should have been sooner, and I agree. But rather than dwell on how long it took, let's focus on the fact that our staff are empowered by having them. There was a good reception in that implementation, and it's going to afford for us to be more transparent moving forward as an organization. Additionally, you know, your policies need to be solid. You need to follow them. And, you know, one of the areas we see transparency is our complaint process. Every agency has one. It's post-mandated. But for someone to participate in that process, it shouldn't be burdensome. It shouldn't be cumbersome.
Thank you. This will be our last question before your statements. And we'll start with candidate Lukovsky. Describe your management style and how that style is beneficial to running the sheriff's department.
I think my management style is a combination of many. But one thing I can emphatically say about my style is I've been a person to put my people in the spotlight before me. And I think this will resonate. 7 months ago, there were a large percentage of St. Louis County residents that didn't know who Jason Lukovsky was. And that's part of my management style. I progressed through my career. I realized that as you reach or attain the next level, your duties and responsibilities change. I had fond memories of being a criminal investigator. To this day, it was my favorite job. Mm-hmm. But a close second was watching one of your employees succeed. Knowing that it's kind of like letting your kid get on a bike, right? And you get that big smile as they go down the road. Seeing one of your employees become successful because of what you provided them is another great feeling. That is why there are so many people who have stepped up to endorse me, because they have worked with me, they know what I'm about, and they know what leadership means to me.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsay?
Yeah, well, to address the question, I am a collaborative leader, and People say, well, name recognition is a big deal. Well, name recognition comes with hard work. When you look at candidates, you want to see, well, what has your involvement been? What is your track record? And I got promoted because I was engaged with the community. I developed strong relationships. I was on boards of important organizations for the safety of women, for example. That's what propelled me and helped me be a better leader. As I was a police chief, I was also president of the Minnesota Police Chiefs Association, and I developed relationships with chiefs in this county that remain to this day, to the point where I got the endorsement of the range chiefs, like I mentioned. They want collaboration. They want to know who the sheriff is. They want to know who the undersheriff is. And that's what we need in the county, is someone who's going to be out there and engaged. And the old adage goes, the best predictor of the future is the past. And if we want an engaged leader that's going to be actively there and present and active throughout the county, look at the past. Not someone that you didn't know their name 7 months ago.
Thank you. At this time, we will ask each candidate to give a 2-minute closing statement, and we begin with candidate Ramsay.
Well, I'll pick up where I left off on, what the candidate's about. And, this is my hometown. I've been fortunate to get endorsed by a lot of my teachers from junior high and high school that I've kept relationships with, through colleagues, through mayors, people that I've worked with. And that means a lot to me. But what that says, though, is it says that I have a track record of working with a diverse group of people. In this race, it's nonpartisan, but a lot of people want to know what political group you're affiliated with. And the reality is, in my case, people don't know. Because I've been able to work with over 30 city councilors and worked well with them to get the job of government done and to keep things safe. During my time in Duluth, we lowered violent crime. We lowered shootings. We lowered robberies. We lowered property crimes like burglaries and auto theft significantly. And that track record is the best predictor of the future. Again, on looking at new ways of doing law enforcement, technology, the Sheriff's Department really is behind in technology, and we need to get it up to speed. Relationships, there's frustration right now, and with 911, they've recently lowered the number of minimum dispatchers from 9 to 7. And I'm hearing from law enforcement leaders, law enforcement employees, public safety, fire, that they can tell that those numbers are not what they used to be as far as the dispatchers. So we need someone who's going to look ahead, do strategic planning to ensure that we can fill those seats and recruiting, as well as take care of our public safety employees, because it is a tough job right now and they need leadership to stand up for them and highlight the good work that they're doing.
Thank you. Candidate Lukovsky.
Once again, I'd like to thank you and the League of Women Voters for this opportunity here today. If it isn't broke, don't fix it, right? St. Louis County has a lot to gain in terms of our technological advancements. I've had a front row seat to technology for my last 10 years. No path is correct. Doesn't matter how we got here, but it does matter how you went about how you got there. I would stress to voters, do a side-by-side comparison. You've got two quality candidates right here. There's no doubt about it. I'm not going to deny that. I think the voters are in a very good position. But just because someone has not been involved at the forefront on certain things doesn't mean that there wasn't a lot of work being done behind the scenes, because there is experience within the experience. The St. Louis County Sheriff's Office is in a very good spot right now. We've had recent turnover within our command staff levels. 6 of the 11 command staff members have turned over in terms of attrition. We will be losing Sheriff Ross Littman, sheriff of 20 years. There is an opportunity for change. You have new leadership, ready, willing, and able. to take over these reins and bring this agency into the future. Our survey results show we are doing a very good job. Is crime rising? Yes, sometimes. But as we look at crime trends and crime rates, let's be careful on how we put out our statistics, because there's always manipulation that could in fact happen when you leave out a certain category. Let's focus on those community relationships. It's important for the citizens to know that we are not in despair in terms of our 911 center or other employment opportunities. Can we avoid the topic? No, we need to be proactive about it.
Thank you. At this time, we will be closing our forum. This concludes the candidate forum for the office of St. Louis County Sheriff. It is our purpose in sponsoring events such as this to provide you with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss issues that are important to you. There is never enough time to cover all the issues in a limited time setting such as this. If your questions were not answered, you should feel free to contact the candidates directly. We hope this program has helped you learn more about the St. Louis County Sheriff candidates and issues so that you can make an informed choices at the polls on Tuesday, November 8th. We thank the candidates, PACT-TV, you, for making this event possible. PACT-TV will carry this forum and others. Check your listing for a schedule of times.